Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. All the watches you see here are in stock and for sale, so reach out to Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability questions. That's Team Mosso at the1916company.com. We can overnight these watches anywhere in the world. It is not too late to stock up for the holidays. So today we're discussing a piece that's relatively easy to date because it tells you right on the back, Vancouver 2010. So an Olympic special and a limited edition, though not particularly limited. You could see 2010 piece is one of the best looking Omega Seamaster Diver 300 meters. It's actually almost passable as a Swiss tribute watch because of the preponderance of white and red. It's a really great example of the last of the anodized aluminum bezel Diver 300 meters. Of course, for 2012, the line would get a ceramic bezel. I like this better. Now, of course, it also does away with the distinctive Omega wave dial, which makes this stand out as unique. We still have the skeleton hands, but we also have the Olympic rings in their 5 different colors as the counterweight to the seconds hand. The bezel action is 120 clicks, and you have the Olympic dedication on the back. Omega wants you to remember that they have been the Olympic timekeeper since 1932. Inside the clasp, we've got a fold-out dive extension, which is a great piece as it's thick gauge steel, just like the clasp itself. And the clasp is a thick gauge steel single swing arm with twin trigger release. You can see the engravings on the clasp are still very deep, very sharp, very distinct. And the watch has seen minimal, if any, and professional refinishing. Taking a quick look at the case, it's very familiar. Screw-down crown, lyre-style lugs, helium escape valve for you saturation divers. Of course, the watch has no shortage of luminescence, and you can see that to good effect right here. In fact, all 3 hands are lumined, so you can see that the watch is running in the dark if you do choose to dive with it at night or to particular depths. You can also line up the bezel pearl with the minutes hand for an impromptu 0 to 60 minute count-up timer. Now we've got caliber 2500 in here, which is a coaxialized 1120, which is an Omega-fied ETA 289282. So we've got a 48-hour power reserve, COSC chronometer certification, coaxial escapement, free sprung balance, 5-position adjustment, hacking seconds, and a quick set date. Easy watch to wear, I know, because I own one. I have the original James Bond 253180, and it's the same size. Mine is a little bit less refined because you can see, among other things, this one has those lovely applique indices rather than printed features on the dial. But the famous bracelet with its polished intermediates, the faceted bezel, the aesthetic, the skeleton hands, it's somewhere between what Pierce Brosnan wore and what the Diver 300 meter would become as it grew up and gained more refinement later in its life. So a really cool piece and one of the best of the Seamaster Diver 300 meter limited series. All right, let's take a look at a cushion case watch that makes no compromises. This is the one. If you're looking at a Vacheron icon, it can be difficult because Vacheron, truth be told, doesn't have anything that's been in the catalog as long or as prominently as a Patek Calatrava or a Nautilus or Audemars Piguet's Royal Oak. And I have to say, even the Longa 1 has been around longer than any modern-day Vacheron model. But if we look back to 2008, and then further back to 1921 and 1919, we get this watch. And frankly, this watch has grown into its role as Vacheron's icon. What you see here is actually based on a composite of those 2 originals from 1919 and 1921. This is the American 1921. It's the 40mm case. You can see it's actually a monoblock case. There's no separate bezel, so you have this nice seamless look. It's 40mm square, so it wears the same distance across the wrist that it wears across your wrist longitudinally, and you can see it wears really nicely. It's thin, it's fine, it's upscale. You have that lovely eggshell toned granular dial with sort of, I would say, almost an Art Nouveau font for the numerals. Remember, back in 1921, no one was talking about Art Deco. The lugs are beautifully welded into place, an old school way of making a case. We have lovely blackened gold hands, including Breguet style for the hours and minutes. Flip it all over, we have a Vacheron manufactured caliber. This is the 65-hour power reserve manual wind 4400, and you can see that it doesn't cheat you on interior angles. They are there, and they're executed to a high degree. You can see there's actually 3 of them. We have mirror finish on the stud holder. We've also got black polished screw heads with chamfered slots in circumference. Bevels are broad, mirrored, beautifully hand decorated. We have an off-center solarization of the crown wheel core, which I think is very cool and unexpected. And then solarization on the barrel cover. You can see the barrel is quite large, and that we've got 3 distinct bridges, one for the winding system in the barrel, one for the train, and then one for the balance itself. Geneva hallmark finish, and you can see this is one of the most recent versions, so it's got Geneva hallmark on both movement and case. A really slender watch, just over 8 millimeters thick, a really iconic piece from Vacheron. Maybe it didn't make its comeback until 2008, but I believe this watch is now a forever watch in the Vacheron catalog. And in the future, when we talk about Vacheron icons, we'll talk about this shoulder to shoulder with the Royal Oak, the Nautilus, the Speedmaster Professional, and the Jaeger LeCoultre Reverso. This really is Vacheron at its best. Now, if you want a cushion case watch that is much more affordable, how about Zentier? And yes, it is Zentier, not Zentier. So this is actually a special collaboration between Zentier watches and Watch Ho & Co., which is a watch community founded by Jackie Ho in Hong Kong. Good vibes only is their motto. They don't like watch snobs. So everyone and every watch is welcome. They're very accepting. Now in steel, this watch is one of 88 made. Go over, check out Watch Ho & Co. DM them on Instagram if you're interested in buying this. Also go over to Zentier's website and express interest. But these might be sold out by the time you see this video. So I'm just showing you mine as an expression of appreciation. Now, the Audemars Piguet John Schaefer cases, based on the case design created for American industrialist John Schaefer in the 1930s, that was the inspiration here. So the 36 millimeter dimension is across, not including the crown. It's pretty thin at 10.9 millimeters, and I measure it at 43.8 lug to lug, but with a broad 21 millimeter spacing between the lugs, so it's got nice modern presence on the wrist. It has a genuine malachite dial, so no two are exactly alike. Each one of the 88 effectively unique. It's a jump hour with scrolling minutes, and what's fascinating to me is when I opened the box, it came with an alternative display case back, and I have to admit I've only ever seen this feature on super haute de gamme independents and stuff like Patek Philippe Perpetual calendars. So you do have a choice. You can choose either one, and I actually like the inscription on the back because the movement inside, it's worthy, it's mechanical, but it's also a Seagull ST1721, so it's not a particularly good-looking automatic, but it yields a capable jump hour, 3 Hz beat rate, 20 joules, and a 42-hour power reserve, so it's going to give good service on this watch. Now, the piece has a combination of leather and pull-tab spring bars on the strap. There's a little Zentier branded pin buckle. What's interesting is Zentier, founded by Morten Lova, who is actually a world champion dancer, and so he went from professional dance to making Zentier watches, and technically this is the model Z6. So you could see that on the case back. This is Z6001, so the first version of the Z6. A really nice watch that wears super compact, but has a lot of personality and wrist presence. Now, they retailed these for $949, and I'm sort of showing it here out of appreciation for Jackie Ho, who's a friend and a founder of this watch group. So this was very much his vision. So again, probably all sold out, but reach out to Watch Ho & Co. on Instagram to see if they've got any left, or maybe if they're going to make a second run, you might get your name on the list. Definitely worth your while. A really nice watch. Okay, so let's spend a lot more money for a digital display watch. This is about as zany as it gets. I would love to own a Bethune DB28, a Patek Philippe 5016. I would love to own a Ferdinand Berthoud FBRES, but I realized that something like this is probably the upper reaches of what's even theoretically possible from a Grail watch perspective from me. This watch came out in 2021. It's 41.3 millimeters in diameter in platinum, 48.5 lug to lug, and about 11.3 millimeters thick. This is the Patek Philippe inline perpetual calendar 5336P. Now, this is the original version. It has a sort of stainless steel-like satin brushing from top to bottom with a fade on the dial, which is really kind of cool. There is a newer model that came out this year with a salmon dial, but this is the original, and it works really nicely. It's a little bit harder to read the time than to read the calendar, but that's intentional. Now, the inline perpetual calendar is something Patek used in the 20th century on pocket watches, but this is its debut in a wristwatch format. You can see it uses the case design of the historic 3448 and the 3450 perpetual calendars, but this is also considered to be a little bit more of a senior version and a sequel to the 5235 regulator. So that is an annual calendar. This is a true perpetual. It does feature hacking seconds. You can see the top Vesselton diamond between the lugs, letting you know that this is a platinum Patek Philippe. No polishing, no reduction of the metal. This one's in excellent shape. You can see this is what they call an American style calendar. Day, grande date, and month. Turning it all over, you can see the movement that makes it happen. Now, this is not the 240 micro rotor. This is the 31260. This is an all-new generation of Patek micro rotor automatic, and the casing up diameter of the movement is 34 millimeters, so it really fills out this case. It is extraordinary with 55 jewels and over 500 parts. It is effectively as complex as a grand complication. Now, changes from the regulator version is we go from a gold micro rotor to one that's made of platinum now for greater winding efficiency. And although the power reserve remains 48 hours, there's 20% more energy in the mainspring in order to power the more energy-intensive perpetual calendar complication. We have this lovely large-scale large diameter movement with a handsome architecture, as we have this sort of crescent-like sweep down from the barrel to the escapement. You can see individual finger bridges for the drivetrain, just like a grand old Geneva pocket watch. Hybrid ceramic bearings for winding. We've got a free-sprung Gyromax style balance with a silicone hairspring. These watches are accurate to -1 + 2 seconds per day, and again, hacking is included. This movement features these incredibly broad Côte de Genève, which I really like, and then several different sizes of engine-tuned perlage with a high grade of mirrored beveling. So there's just a lot to love here, mechanically and aesthetically. This really is my grail. Throw it on the wrist. Let's see what the grail looks like. When the grail is attained, it's going to look like that. It's probably the biggest watch I could wear. In terms of size, it wears large for its size, probably because of the shape of the lugs. Now, I can wear this, no problem, but I do think you need a wrist of my size or larger to wear this well. If your wrist is a little bit smaller, go for a 5235. Awesome watch, real weighty. You could tell where the quality went. Money was spent here, and I adore it. All right, now, let's say your Patek budget isn't quite that extravagant, but you want everything that makes the brand special. We can get that in the 5960-01G. Now, this was not the first white gold 5960. I believe that one was a special edition for the Moscow boutique. But what we have right here was the first general series production version of the 5960 in a white gold format, and you can see that it's very different from a standard 5960. It's almost like they cross-pollinated this with the 5524G Calatrava Pilot travel time, as we've got elements that are very similar to the travel time. For example, we've got the same style of counterweighted clevis-like buckle that's used on the pilots. You also have this cross-stitching on a pilot-style calfskin and contrasting stitched leather strap. You've got the same granular dial in blue. We've also got a lot more luminescence here, and you can see that the watch has no shortage of that in the dark. Now, it's a nicely sized watch. If you can't wear the 5905, don't despair. That's a 42, but this is 49.5, and you can see the white gold, gray gold. It's the type of white that's white all the way through and never needs to be rhodium plated. They went all out with the little references to other Patek model lines. You can see the Tasti Tondi round pushers with their fluted outer profile, just like on a 1463, and a lovely concave bezel that thins the watch out. We've got a mono counter down at 6 o'clock, so we have coaxial chronograph minutes and hours to keep the dial uncluttered, annual calendar, date, 8 month, only one adjustment necessary during the jump from February to March each year. Now, it is a flyback chronograph, which means reset and restart without first stopping. Very handy if you're timing events that occur in rapid succession. There's also a power reserve indicator, so you're getting a lot of complications here. There's a little subdial down there that tells you whether it is nighttime or daytime. Basically, when that little subdial is dark, you don't want to use the pusher adjusters to set the calendar. Flip it all over. Caliber 28-520. It's got a little bit of a flattened column wheel. It's sort of a hybrid of a cam and a column wheel. That's how I describe this. And so you get the crisp actuation of a column wheel, but you can see that it doesn't have the crenellated towers of a column wheel. It is a vertical clutch system, though, so if you want to just leave your chrono running full-time, you can do so without any additional wear, tear, or damage to the watch. That's a quality of a vertical clutch. So is the seamless jump-free actuation. There's no extraneous movement or problem resetting directly to the index when you have a vertical clutch, because there's no play in a vertical clutch. This is a very rugged movement. You can see it's a timepiece that is adjusted in 6 positions. It's free sprung. It's got an anti-magnetic silicone hairspring. It's large diameter. It nicely fills this case back. Take a look at it on the wrist. Again, if the 5905 is too much for you, this is a great way to really get the most out of Patek Philippe complications for a reasonable price, and a watch that's going to hold its value long term. It's already depreciated, it's never going to lose any more, and it's a lot of complexity between the power reserve, the AM, PM, the annual calendar, and the Flyback chronograph plus automatic winding. There's just a lot to love, and there's a reason why the 5960 was considered to be a bestseller for Patek Philippe. Versions of it are still in the catalog today. It was just a winner on every count, from design to innovation to value. All right, so I've got another watch for you. This time also in white gold, but a completely different style. From Oldenzaal in the Netherlands, from Tim and Bart Grönefeld, the horological brothers, we have the Principia 1941, named after the Principia Mathematica, the magnum opus of Isaac Newton. So the 1941 part of the nomenclature refers to the case. 1941 is a 39.5 millimeter case with this particular profile. There is a lot of impressive sculpting going on here, and you can see that this case was not cheap to make. Excruciatingly handcrafted and finished. This is a case for the ages, with dips, swells, flutes, flares, creases, and curves. I can't say enough good things about the inspiration here. Now, it's about 47.5 millimeters lug to lug, so the watch does wear true to size. It's quite compact, and a lady can enjoy this watch. You can see that on the wrist it's nice and thin. It's not an ultra-thin watch, but it does slide underneath the dress cuff. Taking a look, the case is white gold, as you can see. Properly hallmarked right there, but then the dial is made of sterling silver, which is perhaps the precious metal you didn't count on. You can see the dial has good depth to it. We have fired alpha-style hands in steel, and then we have these lovely micro-faceted and mirror-polished applique indices with a 3-step dial, 1, 2, 3, with small seconds, a really gorgeous look on top of a G06 movement. It was the first automatic caliber created by the Gronefelds, and the 6th overall. Now, I have to be honest, this is the basic train of the Streller automatic construction launched by his company Urteil. You'll see the same basic architecture in the Streller Sirena, but the execution here is much higher. First, the bridges are made of stainless steel, which is a miserably difficult thing to finish, which is probably why the Gronefelds used it. They have that Audemars Piguet Renoir Papy pedigree, and it really shines through on the finishing. Now, it's an automatic winder with a 3 Hz beat rate, 6-position adjustment, a free-sprung balance, and a full balance bridge. It's got a 56-hour power reserve, and you can see all of this pivoting on jewels that are largely set in golden chaton, just like a vintage pocket watch. Look at the solarization on the barrel cover. Look at the multiple finishings on the rotor, and then the combination of black polish and solarization on the ball bearing. All screw heads are black polished with chamfered slots in circumference. You can see engine turning on the base plate. And my favorite feature, triple finished bridges. So you have these recesses that are media blasted. Then you have this brushed channel along the edges. And then you could see, when you turn the bridges on their edge, we have mirrored anglage. So triple finished bridges in steel, and you can see that they have the bell gable profiles, emulating the roofing of traditional Dutch houses, because lest you forget, Orange Army, these are the Gronefelds, and they are Dutch. And they remind you again on the back of their distinctive buffalo leather straps, which are super soft. You can see it's an unusual type of hide that has its own unique pattern and grain. And then on the bottom, wonderfully supple, we have, of course, this lovely little fluted buckle that is reminiscent of the lug profile, so lovely design parallelism right there. Full marks. Now, if you also want to go with an automatic that gives you 3 hands and an unusual case architecture, we're way out there now, but this is actually a limited edition launched in 50 pieces by de Bethune, and this actually came out for the 2023 model year, although it was launched in 2022. It is the DB27 Titan Hawk V2 JPS for John Player Special. So you remember the distinctive black and gold tobacco livery of Lotus race cars of the 1970s? It's back. Now you can see this case is a typical DB27 in size, being 10.9 millimeters thick and 43 millimeters in diameter, but it's made of DLC-covered zirconium, so super resistant to scratches. The elements that are gold are actually yellow-fired titanium. We have the distinctive spring-loaded floating lugs, and I believe in this application they go from 51 to 47 millimeters. You can see that the case features engraving on its flanks. This is Denis Flageolet's microlight engraving, which he thinks is just a little bit more appropriate for a modern watch than something like a Breguet style rosette or a Grand Orge guilloche. This is still reductive lathe engraving, but in a much more modern fashion. You can see it again on the dial. De Bethune makes its cases, dials, and movements, so what you're paying for here is all De Bethune. Easy way to tell the difference between a 27 V1 and V2. Does it have a date indicator? V1. Does it have a seconds hand? V2. Let's see if we can get this fired up here. So the watch is an automatic winder, and a big difference between a V1 and a V2 is that a V2 has a display case back. Now you're looking at a smoked sapphire over the movement, so the movement itself is not actually tinted. You can see microlight used again on various components. We've got a full balance bridge to brace against shock and a 60-hour power reserve. We have De Bethune's patented balance wheel made of titanium with white gold masses. You can see it's been fired blue. And then you also have their patented hairspring curve with a silicone escape wheel for low friction and minimal maintenance. So this watch is full of patented De Bethune technologies, right up to and including those variable geometry floating lugs. Throw it on the wrist, it wears really nicely. Whether you're a fan of motorsports, vintage cars, Lotus, or you just love fun, innovative timepieces, this is a great pathway to ownership at De Bethune because a lot of folks are more comfortable with a solid dial watch. So if you're coming from another brand, this is always a great olive branch and a bridge to De Bethune ownership. Also, because it is considered to be the entry point to the catalog, the pricing is going to be more attractive for people who are new to the brand than some of the more complicated and involved models. And again, with this particular coating, this is an extremely scratch-resistant watch. Look at the attention to detail. We have blackened zirconium, and we have the fired yellow titanium on the buckle. And look at the finish. There's actually several. Polished fired yellow titanium. We have this matte finished black zirconium for the lugs. We have polished blackened DLC, and then we have the microlight engraving. So there's a lot of nuance on this watch. Finally, we end with a bang, and we end with another De Bethune timepiece. This one, a limited edition, but one of one. You're looking at the DB28 Steel Wheels Tourbillon Bacchus with an extraordinary set of burgundy accents. This is a piece unique. I don't have to cover up the serial number because you could probably guess it, but you could see the burgundy is unique to this model based on the 2020 Steel Wheels Tourbillon. What we've got here is a watch that's about 42.6 millimeters in diameter and about 10.9 millimeters thick. It's got the floating lugs, it's got the 5-day power reserve, and because this is the steel wheels, the titular steel wheels are actually the mainspring barrels. So the barrel has been skeletonized to reveal them, and then the caps to the barrels, if you look, they're actually caps in skeletonized burgundy sapphire. So the barrel covers are still solarized, but you could see that they're actually sectioned and they're skeletonized so that you have windows down to the two mainsprings. So what's left of the barrel cap is still solarized, and then you have the burgundy cover on top of that. Now, when the springs are coiled very close to the center, that means it's fully wound. Again, 5-day power reserve. You cannot accidentally overwind these barrels because one features a slipping bridle style mainspring, so just like an automatic, it can't be overwound and damage itself. Now, 5 days of reserve is pretty impressive considering the energy intensive tourbillon. First thing to note about this tourbillon, it is the lightest tourbillon in the world. It weighs 18 hundredths of a gram. There's 63 parts, the lightest of which is 1/10,000th of a gram. It's made of titanium, silicon, and white gold. It beats at 36,000 vibrations per hour, so 10 beats per second like a Zenith El Primero, and it has a 30-second period, so it spins at twice the speed of a standard tourbillon. Now, at De Bethune, these tourbillon watches are rated to about plus 0.5, plus 1 second per day, so this is a chronometric tourbillon, not merely an ornamental one. You could see that the watch features a unique handset, a burgundy-fired titanium chaptering outboard, a burgundy-shaped sapphire cap on top of the barrel bridge, and then mirrored caps over the base plate and underneath the tourbillon. So some watches will give you black or mirrored polish on a screw, maybe a swan's neck regulator, something small. This is a huge amount of diamond paste finished mirror polish. Take a look at the edge of the bridge. You can see that it is mirror finished and it is mirror englazed. So traditional finish is alive and well at De Bethune. You can see that little globes of titanium are used to indicate the hours, and then there is a serrated titanium minutes track. We once again have a floating lug setup, and then on the case back, we have a power reserve indicator that reveals the underlying mechanism. On the back, we have media blast, perlage, satination, and beveling, as well as polishing on the screws. It is the works, and again, a piece unique. So this watch, made in 2022, a complete individual effort. De Bethune makes a small number of full custom orders, and this was one of them. An extraordinary watch that would be the capstone to any collection of exceptional independent references. This is the DB28 Steel Wheels Tourbillon Bacchus. If you love these watches, reach out to Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability questions. And remember, we ship worldwide overnight, so don't be shy.